Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next tutorial where we move on to a little bit more information about programming. Now, there's two videos before this. If you haven't seen them, the first one helped us set up Eclipse and the Java JDK. The link to that will be in the description for this video. And the one right previous to this got us started off on our first code. And again, the link to that will also be in this description. But moving on, we're at MrButka.net again, and we're going to go ahead and click on the programming sites, and we will take a look at the turtle tome. Now, last time we left off, you worked on Chapter 2, and we worked on it together. Hopefully you've read through it and you understand a little bit more about objects and the class and variables. It's really important concepts, and you really shouldn't go on further without having read this. Again, if you have any questions about it, you can comment below or contact me otherwise. But after going through this, we move on to Chapter 3, and when we take a look, this talks more about reading class documentation. And we can see here they start off talking about the constructor, which requires us to type in turtle_x_y. And we've done that in our previous code when we've declared a variable, a turtle variable, and we named it Yurtle, and then we use that constructor by assigning the variable Yurtle the value of a new turtle object, and here's where we're running the constructor, turtle_5100. So that's what they mean when they say $x_y, is we can put double values in here. And if you remember, doubles are numbers that include decimal places, whereas ints are whole numbers that do not include decimal places. Both can be positive and negative, however. So what we're going to do, instead of following the chapter directly, because of course you could just read the chapter yourself, I'm going to create a little bit of this code, and we're going to talk about it differently as well as experiment a little differently. So on figure 3.1, why don't you go ahead and make sure that you replicate the code. Before we do that, I'll get you set up. The name of the class is called DrawTriangle. So we will create a new class by expanding our project folder and then opening up our source folder, and then right-clicking on our package. We'll go to New Class, and we will call it DrawTriangle. Following Java convention, we're going to capital D and capital T, and then you'll have this. Go ahead and take a second to type that out. I'm going to do it in quick mode. All right, once you have that typed out, you should make sure that you have it spaced out. Now, a good shortcut is Control-Shift-F. If you type in Control-Shift-F, it will automatically format your code. So Control, Shift, and F. And then make sure after you formatted it, make sure you have a little bit of space, because it makes it a little bit easier to see things. So we should have space between the braces, any major constructs. So it's a little bit easier for your eyes to read. Now, we can see when we look at this code that we create a color named mauve, and then we assign that mauve color a new color object, much like what we did with the turtle, and then we give it RGB values 102, 51, 128. There's other ways to do this as well, but this allows us to have really exact colors. If you wanted to learn more colors, you could simply open up a search engine and type in RGB values, and then you could easily find out RGB values for other colors that are out there that exist pretty easily. But we're not going to talk too much about that right now. So then we declare a variable type by saying turtle, and then we name that variable Ramses. And we can see that we are now constructing Ramses with a turtle constructor. And that constructor, again, comes from this code right here up top. But what we're actually going to do is we're going to look at the API now, because that's the purpose of this code. So let's type on or click on Turtle API there. And if you look, we are now investigating the package turtles. And if you remember back to last video, we imported the turtles library. Well, that's what this is. This is that package that we're looking at. It's hiding some things that we don't really need to focus on right now, but it's a really great example of looking at Java documentation. As a matter of fact, if you look at the official Java documentation, although the color scheme's a little bit different and the font's a little bit different, the layout is very similar, and the way that they organize libraries and classes is really similar. So when we look in the package turtles, we have two classes, Turtle and TurtleProgram. It says right here what they are. Basically, this allows us to create turtles that can draw lines, and this opens up a window so that we can put turtles in it. If I click on Turtle, we're now in the class Turtle, which is in the Turtles package, and we see the constructor summary. This should look very familiar to you. Turtle double X double Y. That's what we've been using. And right here, the summary is construct a turtle who's initially X pixels from the left and Y pixels from the top, which is why it places where it places. Down here, we look at method summary. In Java, you should think of methods as verbs. They're actions that you can make a particular object of that class perform. So as I look, I see DrawTo, face, forward, get orientation, get pen color, and it goes on. One thing I want you to notice is that they're in alphabetical order. So if you're like, geez, I wish I could make my turtle turn left, you should look down here and see if there's something that already exists, and sure enough, there it is. It reads left, double angle. Another thing I want you to focus on is when we're looking at this, if you look, they each have a return type in front of them, void, void, double, java.awt color. And you don't really need to worry about these so much just yet. I can get into these a little bit more in depth when it's a little more appropriate. So we're going to ignore this part of the documentation for now, but the name of the method is in blue in this particular instance, and then the parameters are right here. So let's take a look at this one and make a little bit of sense out of it first. DrawTo double dest X double dest Y draws a line as this turtle moves to the specified coordinates. Well, first let's take a look at what this code does by default. And we see that Ramses, this turtle, has a mauve pen. He moves forward 100, turns left 120, turns forward 100, left 120, forward 100, and then hides. So not too surprising by the name of the class DrawTriangle that this turtle draws a triangle. Before we hide, let's try this moveTo, which will mess up our triangle a little bit, but again, the purpose is to read the API and to be able to use it. So let's take a look at that API one more time. DrawTo, double dest X, double dest Y. So when we go to the code, we're going to say Ramses, because that's the object that we're performing this on, this action or instance method. So Ramses dot draw DrawTo, and then just put in some numbers here. I'm going to put in, I kind of want him by the bottom left corner of the screen. So I know my window's right now 200 by 200, so I'll say 180, 180. That should get me close to that bottom right of the screen, I believe. And then Control S, save it. And let's go ahead and run it and see if our behavior is a little bit different. So it goes ahead and it starts to draw this triangle, making these 120-degree turns left. And then he draws to, kind of looks like Pink Floyd if you're a Pink Floyd fan, then he draws to 180 by 180. So that's kind of how to use these APIs. When you look at them, you just kind of mess with them a little bit. We're going to continue to do it, which will completely change how this program was initially designed to be. But that's learning. So let's take a look at another one. I see right double angle and I saw left double angle. So they look very similar. As a matter of fact, it seems the only difference is it turns left counterclockwise and turns right clockwise. All right, so I'm going to use left. And let's go back and, well, let's make sure we're looking at this correctly. Void, we're going to ignore whatever that means. And then left is the name of the method, and then double angle is the information it needs. So Ramses we'll do it after we make that change there. Ramses dot, I'm having the hardest time. Ramses dot left. And then let's go ahead and put in a number. Let's do 90, and then end that statement with a semicolon. And you'll notice now that we have that change in the code. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. And now Ramses continues to make that triangle, making 120-degree turns every time, then draws to the 180, 180, and then makes a left turn at 90 degrees and hides. If you wanted to put a single line comment by putting these two slashes here, you can comment this code out so that it no longer activates. The compiler and the Java virtual machine ignores this line of code. And this is now nothing more than a comment for the human reader. I wanted to show you that because it's a nice way to get rid of code without having to delete it, just in case you want to go back to it. Sometimes when we're in the editing process, it's a really useful tip. And it allows us to sort of look at our program and see if it's working the way we want. All right. If we look at this API one more time, let's try one more here. So I was able to make it turn left, and I was able to make it draw to. Let's try MoveTo at this point. All right. So MoveTo, double dest X, double dest Y, moves this turtle without drawing the line. So let's say I want to try to get somewhere in the middle of this one, the middle of this triangle, close to at least. So I'm going to guess we're starting at 50x when we do this, and we go about 100 pixels to the right, and then we go 100 pixels up, but it's at an angle. So I'm going to guess that this middle is, let's see, if this is 50 and 100, and then we're going up and down back here and then here. I'm going to guess, and I'll probably be wrong, but hopefully somewhat close. I'm going to guess real quick that this is probably 75. It's got to be 75 in the center here. And then I would guess that this would be, we'll go 75, 75. Let's see how close I get. All right, so let's make Ramses moveTo, and let's go 75, 75. So we've got our triangle drawing. Ramses goes off to the corner, makes his Pink Floyd symbol, does his 90 degree, then does a MoveTo. Oof, I missed it. All right, and then goes to 75, 75. So if I really wanted to figure this out, I could break down the math, maybe break down a graph paper and figure this out. But it was a quick guess. So hopefully now you're a little bit more confident with reading the API. You should go ahead and challenge yourself with a couple things to see how much you do understand. Try to use these. The toughest one, in my opinion, is the setPenColor, because it's so just different to new programmers. However, in this code, we've already seen an example of how that's done, and you know how to look up RGB values now. So you could easily change that pen color by adding new colors and just adding setPenColor in different areas. Challenge yourself to do something like that. Also, at the end of this chapter, there are a couple exercises. You should give yourself a shot at those too, to take a look, as well as read through this particular one. But there's a couple exercises here, help you get a little bit more confident. Hope it helps you. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and post down below.